iZombie Season 3, Episode 9, 20-Sided Die. Really enjoyed this episode. It was definitely the nerdy one. Of course, as a nerd, I appreciate the fact that it was a funny D&D sort of thing. Don't play it myself, but every time they do it in the show, there's always a character like Clive where it's like, that character who doesn't really make fun of it. Like Ravi, it's kind of surprising because typically the character like Ravi is the one who would make fun of it, and then that's the one who likes it. But Ravi's nerdy in his own way, so it's like he really didn't like D&D. He went through it, but he wasn't like in love with it. And Clive was like, man, when they're at the comic store, it was like I really love the Flash and stuff like that, and it was just really interesting. It was like, okay, little things there. Of course, they tie it into another DC property, which every once in a while I like to mention. This is technically a DC show. They don't really mention that too often, but the Vertigo is, owned by DC, so it's kind of funny, kind of reference it there. But it was funny, him like loving the way they ended it and everything, and after he actually wins and stuff, I was like, man, the look on his face when I pulled out the head and all that stuff. So really loved his reaction to it. The whole episode in general I thought was really well done. The case was really good, and it led to some really funny moments, and then it actually leads to a recurring character, or I guess I should really say returning character, in Bazio, I believe is her last name. So she actually makes her return to the series. She's the one character who showed up where I was like, oh, that could lead to something pretty good, depending on how things play out. And then there's another character at the end, hopefully I'm getting his name right, but I believe his name was Stacy Boss. He makes a return at the end, and I knew at some point he had to come back. So with the way they did it, with these two characters coming back into the fold, as things get really crazy, with the way they did the end, it was a great ending for this episode because it starts with Ravi. He's nerding out. He is painting a figure, so I'm like pretty sure he got into it. But he's painting, and the dude from the meeting shows up like, hey, do you have a minute? So he's like, sure. And they end up having Don E because he took a giant chunk of that random dude's brain after it had been sitting for, I believe it was 20 days, which is like twice as long as Ravi had done it for. So he's going nuts. Like he was on this World War II brain. And when his buddy took like that little sliver and he, wrote down what was happening, I thought it was just, okay, he had visions. I thought it was like Liv having visions or any other zombie. I thought he was like frozen in place maybe for, he mentioned it was like 2 hours long. I was like, oh man, he was like frozen in place for 2 full hours. And then we get to see Don E, and he's losing his mind. He's like, pulling on like the beer taps and everything, like shooting him like a gunner. And I was like, oh, I thought that he would just be like frozen in place for 2 hours, stuck inside of, a flashback. So it was pretty nuts. It's like people just being on drugs. Like it made him see all these things, and he's living it out. And everyone else is kind of just looking at him as he's jumping over the bar, and like, because he thinks he's jumping out of an airplane and stuff. So it was pretty crazy. And that was like a little piece. I didn't think it was going to have that effect. I just thought maybe there would be a random little thing we get to see with him taking the brain. But the one dude took like a tiny sliver, and then he took, I thought honestly he was like, that can't be that much more. He took a long sliver, but he took like a tiny little, melon baller piece, and it was like, who knows how long that was, and he ends up getting captured. So the way they ended it was great with that moment, and then it leads into, Stacey Boss coming back into town. So I'm like, all right, that was a great way to end it with 2 really crazy moments. Ravi having to, continue this lie, which he starts off at the beginning, where we get to see the meeting, and he talks about stopping them from doing the whole kidnapping thing, because it's like, hey, if they scratch you, then, you could end up starting the apocalypse that you're trying to prevent, so let me work on this vaccine, which of course he doesn't have. So he might have to just alter that into saying, I might have a cure. He could just easily be like, this is what I have so far, we'll test it on him. If he melts or whatever, he melts, and then he hits him with the cure, and it's like, well, it actually cured him, so we can turn zombies into humans. That way we don't even have to wipe them out, that sort of thing. So I feel like that's eventually where he'll have to lead it, because otherwise, I feel like he could have said he was close to making a cure anyway, because he did the vaccine thing, and no one really brought it up, and I'm like, maybe he could have just started with the cure. Like, of course, he's never tested it anyway, so it's like, it's the same principle. Like, he's never tested, this fake vaccine. He could have just easily said, I've never tested this cure, but I think it works. I got like a little, he could have, I feel like he could have said anything he wanted to, because it would be the same thing as with the vaccine. It's the exact same, processes to testing. And I was like, I feel like he could have just said, I'm close to a cure. We might be able to figure this out. And then, that stops it, and we don't even have zombies anymore. We stop them from even being zombies. So I don't know. I thought it was weird that he went with the whole vaccine thing when it was like that seemed like a pointless lie when he could have said exactly what was really happening, and it would have been the exact same outcome. Considering no one asked him any questions like how are you testing this or doing that, exact same outcome. But well, I'm assuming eventually he'll have to just be like, like I said, just to act as if he's testing this vaccine, and then it ends up being a cure. So we'll see what happens with Donnie in this next episode, which they focus nothing on like the elements I've been wanting to see. They've been doing this a lot this season. Every time something epic happens, I'm like, crap, I can't wait to see the preview for the next episode. It's like the least interesting stuff. Like they did the D&D thing for this episode. For the next one, it's Liv seemingly on like another dominatrix brain. It's someone else. But it's like, man, they focus on like the silly elements, and I'm like, crap, there's so much that happened in like these last couple of minutes of this episode. That's all I wanted to get a preview for, and it was like, nope, let's go with the comedy element. So they're definitely holding off on what we should be expecting from, the Ravi storyline, how that's going to affect Blaine, Stacy Boss coming back into play, especially with, everything that's going on. That's just another really crazy element, even though he'll mostly be going after Peyton and Blaine, I would assume. It'll wrap, everything will end up coming together, I have to assume, with how crazy things are getting with this, war kind of building up little by little. So I'm very excited for where we're headed. We have the mayor being shot in this episode. A lot of people were taking pictures. They kind of were jumping around the room, but I feel like they focused 2 separate times on that random guy like taking pictures, and I'm like, I feel like maybe there's some angle where someone didn't print a picture or something, but the newspaper came out where he's the hero in front of his son and everything, so I'm like, I guess that won't end up happening, but it still could. It could totally be the case. Also during that scene where we see the the newspaper and everything, we find out that Blaine is like throwing little slivers of brain to his dad. Honestly, if he's not dead, I have to assume he's coming back to life. Like I was like, okay, he'll cut the rope and drop him in the thing. He'll basically drown continuously or whatever, eventually turn into like a crazy zombie, and then there's nothing to it. But he's going back, he's throwing in little slivers to keep him sane so that he can torture him, which makes a lot of sense for Blaine, especially considering the relationship he had with his father. But like that just seems like it's going to lead to some bad elements for Blaine. His dad is somehow going to be pulled out of that well, and he'll be back. He'll be a villain once again. So I feel like that's where we're headed for that. Maybe not anytime soon, but I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow got rescued and pulled right out of that well by the time we hit the season finale. It really wouldn't surprise me, just because Blaine didn't finish him off. He wants to torture him, and even for the villains, that never works permanently. It's always like, I gotta torture you, and somehow something comes in to stop me from torturing this random person, whether it's a hero or even another villain character. There's always something. So I feel like eventually his dad will end up being pulled out of that well, and he'll be kind of returning back to being a villain for Blaine. But they did some great stuff. We get to see, I can't remember the guy's name, but the brother that's controlling Graves now. I didn't realize that was him from the last episode where he shot the dude. So I just thought that was like the second in command guy. That's honestly what I thought. I felt like they didn't reference the fact that he was her brother in the last episode. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that was him at all. I just thought he was the second in command. I had no idea. So that really surprised me when they actually said like, oh yeah, I met him. He shot me in the stomach. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was the same dude. So it was kind of weird. I mean, I could have missed it. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was, that was that guy. But he's super serious. As soon as the mayor gets shot, he was in like robot mode. Like he didn't flinch or anything. He was just like, boom, and he just started shooting at the guy. So that was very interesting. And of course, someone shooting at the mayor does say a lot for whatever's going on with this zombie group. Someone decided, I guess, no longer to keep tabs, even though it's only been like a few days. Someone already decided to go against that, and they shoot the zombie mayor, try to get things exposed. Maybe they didn't know, considering Stacy Boss is coming back into town. Maybe that was kind of the kickstart some random issues or something, even though I don't really remember him having anything to do with the mayor. But I don't know, we'll see how that plays out. He was, like the kingpin of the underworld, so wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to just kill the mayor just to start off the chaos and then kind of do what he needs to do. But I don't know, it could be tied to him, it could be tied to the zombie group. We get introduced to one woman from the zombie meeting where she kind of talks with Ravi and stuff. and they don't really show her after that moment. I thought she'd have a bit of a bigger role, but it was her introduction, so I feel like she's going to be important. She was like the only other person there that was actually important outside of the security guard from last season's finale, and then of course the two guys who were like leading the meeting. So I feel like we'll get to see a little bit more out of her and where she truly stands. She says she wants a picture, so we'll see how far she'll decide to go to get these pictures, like how crazy she'll, want it or let it get before she's like, I'm out because this is effing nuts. So I'm excited to see how some of that stuff is going to play out, especially with Ravi kind of being the only one on the inside. I'm excited to see how that plays out for him. And, like we have at the end of the episode, it's like, hey, he came to his job, and all I'm waiting for is like one day he's going to do that, like, hey, and then it's like, oh, there's Liv. So, we'll see how that plays. I mean, I would assume he would know, but, just because she's working with a cop doesn't mean that she's going to be in that specific police station. I don't really know exactly how it works because I don't live there. So I'm assuming they have more than one, depending on how they're doing it with the city. But it should be interesting to see how that plays out when eventually they go in and it's like, oh, they have to kind of have this weird three-way sort of lie situation going on. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. But I think they did a great job introducing some new elements from that side of the story with Ravi. Like I said, the ending I really love. Like the whole episode I thought was entertaining, but we get to the ending and it's just like, well, here we go. We had the introduction or reintroduction in an emotional sense with Clive, running into Basio. And then we get the ending with Donnie being captured, and then we go from that to a second character with Stacey Boss coming in, so that's going to be, more dangerous recurring character. But there's a lot of good elements. We still don't have whatever's going on with this Wexler case. It's still brought up, and then Peyton learns a little bit more because she finds out about the mayor being one of the dominatrix clients. So that is still like, I thought it was actually going to get answered. If I'm being totally honest, I thought this was the episode where we get answered. So I feel like there's got to be some major payoff, and I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, if Fillmore Graves was the reason for that. So I'm very excited to see how that ends up playing out, because I thought it was going to be like a little thing where it's like, oh, that's cool, it got saved, comes back for an episode, but it didn't end there when the guy kills himself, and it still didn't conclude in this one either. So I'm like, they're clearly, after so many episodes, it's building up to be something huge. So I'm looking forward to that. But like I said, in general, I think this was a really good episode. Great way to end it. Comedy in general, pretty easy. Once you do Dungeons and Dragons, you can kind of make it easy. We get to see the IT guy, Vampire Steve, so that was awesome. But in general, I think it was really funny, and then, a really great way to kind of cap off the episode leading into next week. But of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and I definitely want to know how you guys think things are going to go with Stacey Boss coming back into play, how that's going to interrupt. Like I said, the two main characters I would have to assume are going to be Peyton and Blaine as far as he's concerned. But now Blaine is doing the new zombie business. We have all this crazy stuff going on with this secret war against the zombies. And I feel like that's going to be impacted because the guy is so important. It's just got to be impacted. So I'm looking forward to that. But we'd love to know your theories on how it'll play out. And like I said, want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know. And thanks for watching.